Hello and welcome to the latest webinar as part of the Innovative Law Practice Technique series. On behalf of the ABA LP Division's Legal Project Management Committee, we welcome Colin Jasper. Colin Jasper has consulted for professional service firms for almost 20 years. In this time, he has had the opportunity to work with many of the leading firms in the US, the UK, and throughout Asia. Colin has worked with a broad range of professionals, including law, accounting, engineering, patent attorneys, consultants, and actuarial. As the Director of Jasper Consulting, Colin's focuses on assisting professional service firms to create greater value for their clients and to capture a fair share of that value for themselves. He authored the pricing chapter in the American Bar Association book, The Power of the Legal Project Management, several chapters in Pricing on the Front Line, and the pricing chapter of Effective Practice Group Leadership. Immediately following the presentation, I will conduct a Q&A segment. Please enter your questions into the question box in the GoToWebinar panel on the right side of your screen during or after the presentation. I will address all questions at the end. With that, I'll hand things over to Colin.
Thank you very much for that, Austin, and thank you for the opportunity to participate today in the webinar. Very happy to take questions as we go, although as I understand it, they'll need to come through the question box. What I want to focus on today is very specifically where might the opportunities be to improve pricing outcomes immediately. There's a lot of things that we could talk about under this topic of improving pricing outcomes in your firm. I often joke with people, I've never met a firm that can't improve its pricing. There's always opportunities, but the challenge is often identifying where to start. Where are the things that we should be doing first? Where are the things that we should be focused on? So to try and keep today's webinar focused, what I really want to focus on is the immediate opportunities. Where are the things that we might be able to do today to improve our pricing outcomes over the next couple of weeks? So I'm really looking for quick hits. So within that background, we're not going to talk about issues that are more medium term. We're not going to cover issues that improve the pricing capability of the firm or make us more cost effective. We're not going to focus on how do we lead or manage pricing within firms. I see these as more medium-term issues. It's not that they're unimportant, it's not that they should be ignored, but just in the limits of time, what we can cover today, I really want to focus more on the short term. So there are three issues in particular that I want to talk about today, all of which I think can give us an immediate hit, and we'll go through them in a little bit more detail. And what I want to try to do is not just make them motherhood, but try to bring them to life and give you examples of how to bring them to life within your firm. The first of them is about attitudes, beliefs. It's how we think about and approach pricing, because if we have poor attitudes towards pricing, if our belief system towards pricing is poor, then we're going to get poor pricing outcomes. So this is the starting point, and I'll go into that in a little bit more detail and what good attitudes towards pricing look like. This is something that we can change people's attitudes pretty quickly, and one of the great things about working with lawyers is that lawyers are smart people. And if you say, why do smart people get such poor outcomes? It's generally because they're thinking about things in the wrong way. So we can change attitudes. They'll then find the solutions if they've got an appropriate attitude and approach. The second is more at a matter level. What are the things that we can do at a matter level? And again, I don't want to hit the most common ideas here. I want to give you some different views of things that we should be thinking about, focused on at a matter level to try to improve profitability on your next matter. And then the final thing that I want to focus on today is where to charge more. Where are the areas within a firm that we should be charging more today? Another common view that I have is that in most firms, there are areas where they are charging too much and there are other areas where they are charging too little. The only issue is that we don't know which is which. We don't know where we're charging too much and where we're charging too little. So what I want to focus on in this session is where are we charging too little? Where are we leaving money on the table? Where could we be charging more today and still winning the work, simply making more money from it? So they're the three things that we're going to go through in turn. And then, as Austin introduced, we'll have plenty of time at the end to explore questions around those. So let's start with this question about the right attitude. One of my pet hates is lawyers who believe that they're in a commodity market, lawyers who believe that the services that they are providing have become commodities. It's not something I subscribe to. I do a lot of research amongst clients, and it's not something that they subscribe to. When we talk about legal services, there is so much that can differentiate legal services. It's very much about the experience of, relationship with, service provided by individual lawyers. If we talk about commoditization, we know that we can differentiate water. And if we can differentiate water, we can clearly differentiate one lawyer from another lawyer. They're not the same, because no two lawyers have exactly the same experience or track record. And so a different way of thinking about it, I think, is that there's no such thing as a price-sensitive client, only clients who have grown indifferent to our differentiation. The reason I like this quote is that it puts the focus back where it belongs. It's not the client's job to understand the difference between what we're offering and what another lawyer is offering. That's our job. It's our job to help them understand how what they're going to get from us is different and unique. That's our job. That's our responsibility to do it. Now, the reason why this attitude about our markets become commoditized, why it's one of my pet hates, is because I believe that if you think you're a commodity, then you are, because you behave that way. You behave that the only way that we can win this work is we have to compete on price. And you start to focus on competing on price. And the problem with that is you don't focus on value for clients. You don't focus on the relationships. You focus on winning because of price. And what's more is, if you focus on winning because of price, the clients that you attract are the price-sensitive clients. And price-sensitive clients are ones that will swap from you to another firm as soon as they find a cheaper firm. And so you end up being a commodity because you believe you are. You attract commodity-based clients, you compete in the wrong way. So this is an example, I think, of a poor mindset. Let me enlarge this and talk about what then might a good mindset look like. What are the components of a good mindset? And these are the key things that I think are really important for us to understand. So the first part is that we really should be focused on profit rather than revenue. If we're focused on revenue, then of course I'm going to discount by 10% to give myself a 90%, a bigger chance of getting the 90% of revenue. But that discounting of 10% may have wiped out a quarter to a third of the profitability on that matter, depending on what our margin is of our firm. So we have to think about the profit. Here's another way to think about this, to talk about the importance of pricing and a 5% impact. If you are operating in, say, your practice is $1 million per partner. So if your firm has revenue of $1 million per partner, a 5% change in price equates to $50,000 profit per partner. Okay, so it's a very, very strong lever. It's the most important financial lever within a firm. 5% change in price, if we're talking about a $1 million practice, is $50,000 profit. And so it's worth fighting for, it's worth focusing on. And we certainly, again, if we're thinking about revenue rather than profit, then we'll be much more willing to discount and lead with discounts. Whereas I'm not saying we should never discount, that's not what I'm saying, but I am saying we should make those decisions consciously based on what we think is going to maximize our profitability rather than simply maximize our revenue. Another attitude towards pricing is, I think, good pricing, which is fair to the client and fair to the firm. I think that's ultimately what we're trying to achieve with pricing. We want to come up with a price that is fair to the client, but is also fair to the firm. And fair to the firm is about profitability and achievement of our objectives and goals, capturing a fair share of the value that we create. And if we have this attitude of we want a price to be fair to the client, but we also want it to be fair to the firm, we can influence the client's perception of fairness. And that's partly our job to do. I'm going to talk more about how we do that later on, but it's our job to influence the client's perception that the price is fair. So we can be very passive in this regard. We can send a proposal to a client and say, here's what we're going to do, here's what it's going to cost, you work out whether it's fair. Or we can actively influence the client's perception that the price is fair. So that again is one of the mindsets I think that we should have. We want to come up with something that's fair to you and fair to us. By comparison, there are many partners that I've seen who, when you talk to them about pricing, their focus is, but the client won't accept it, but the client will say that's too much. And they're very, very focused on the client, but they're not sufficiently focused on, but is this fair and reasonable to us? Is this a fair price to us? So we've got to get that balance. It has to be both. And then the final part of that I think is important from a mindset perspective is recognizing that price is rarely the only issue. I have done a lot of interviews with clients over the years. I still haven't heard a client say, oh, I love my law firm, they're so cheap. Now, that's not what they say about their preference for law firms. Their preference for law firms is much more about their great knowledge and understanding of our business. They're highly responsive. Their expertise is unquestioned. You know, it's much more about other things. And, you know, I'm not saying price is unimportant, but it's rarely the only issue. Now, this is not to say that clients won't complain about price. They think that you're expensive. They think all lawyers are expensive. But because they are complaining about price, it doesn't necessarily mean our price is too high. It's one of those things that we simply have to get used to, that of course clients would like the price to be cheaper. But if they're still buying from you, yes, we'd like it to be cheaper, but we do see value, otherwise we wouldn't be choosing. And so if we have this attitude that price is rarely the issue, we start to focus much more on value. We start to focus much more on differentiation. Now, I don't want to leave this at this level. I don't want to leave this at sort of a motherhood level. I want to try and bring this alive for you. I want to try and say, how do we use this within our firm? How can we change people's attitudes? So if we focus on the very last one here, the issue of differentiation. Those partners who are saying, oh, it's a commoditized market, clients don't see differentiation. They see a broad range of firms that are all capable of delivering this service, of providing the outcomes. What might we do to help change their mindset and their attitude? So this is a simple exercise that you can run within your firm, within practice groups, and try and get them focused on what's truly differentiating them. This is an exercise I often run within firms. And I just ask them to say, think about successful proposals that you have submitted over the last 6 to 12 months. Ideally in a contested bid situation, it doesn't have to be, but a successful proposal that you have put in over the last 6 to 12 months. And then I'll get people to write down, why do you think the client chose you? What was it that actually influenced the client selecting your firm, selecting you to win? And I'll get them to do that as an individual exercise, and then we'll have a discussion about it and we'll collect the ideas. And again, I'd like you to think about, how would you answer this question? What are the things that you would say? When we run this exercise with partners, the things that often come up are elements such as, well, we've done one of these before. We've done a very similar project before, and we were able to demonstrate that we've been here and we've done it. Sometimes there are elements of, we were able to demonstrate that we had a really strong track record in this area. We had really good experience. We were recognized as a market leader in this space. On other occasions, it's more about our knowledge of the client, our relationship with the client. The client likes us, the client trusts us. We've done good work for the client in the past. Sometimes it's about insights. We were able to identify some things that the client hadn't thought about, and we were able to bring those forward. And other times it is price. Price plays a role. And so the summary that we often develop is one along these lines. There's elements about expertise, track record, reputation, but they're really choosing us because they think we're the best people to help them on this matter. There are other elements that are much more focused on the relationship. And relationship is not just I like you and we've got a personal relationship. Sometimes it's more at the organisational level, where it's about you have much better knowledge and insight about our organisation. You understand us, you understand our goals, and that makes you so much easier to work with because we don't have to brief you about our strategy. It may be simply that you've done a lot of good work for us in the past and we value that. We value what you bring to the table. And other times it is about price. Now, ultimately, if you look at this model, what clients want is the intersect. What clients want is the expertise, the relationship, and the price. I'm not going to appoint somebody to do the job if I don't think you've got the capability to do the job. But I'm also not going to appoint you to do the job if I don't think you understand me or my needs, or if I don't particularly want to work with you. But I'm also not going to appoint you to do the job if your price is out of the ballpark. You don't necessarily need to be the cheapest, but you've got to be in the ballpark. So ultimately, they're looking for this overlay. Having said that, different clients put a different emphasis on different parts. So there are clients, for example, who are much more focused on expertise. So these clients, they're really asking the question, who do I think is best placed to help me on this matter? Who do I think is going to get me the best outcome on this matter? Who has been there and done it? Who has demonstrated that they've got the greatest capability to help me on this matter? The greatest quote I heard from a client actually was from a US client, a chief legal officer, who said, when we go to hire a firm, what we're really looking for is nearest the pin. I thought it was a terrific phrase, nearest the pin. We asked the question, what do you mean by nearest the pin? And they said, well, say we've got a big litigation matter. We'll go out to a broad range of firms who we think are capable in this space. But what we're really doing is giving them the opportunity to show us that they're the best place to help us on this matter. Ideally, what we want is someone who's fought a very similar matter before, ideally in the same court, ideally in front of the same judge, and have got a fantastic outcome from their client. Ideally, they just completed it last week so that the team is ready to come on and work now for us. Now, I said, I know I'm not going to get that. I know I'm not going to get a team that's just finished the same job for another client in the same court, in front of the same judge, got a fantastic outcome. I know I'm not going to get that. So the question is, who's nearest the pin? Who is nearest that? And it's very much a question of who's got the best expertise to help us on this matter. So if we're competing for those sorts of clients, our job is to demonstrate that we have a track record of success on similar matters. That's what we're trying to do. So sophisticated clients in this area, they're asking for case studies. Give me a case study of where you've done this before. And what they're really looking for from that case study is, number one, is your case study relevant to our challenge, our issue, our current matter? And number two, what outcome did you get? Because if you didn't get a good outcome, then it's not a great case study. That's what they're looking for. So this is how we compete for these. By comparison, the next group, the relationship-based clients, what they are focused on is they simply want somebody who understands them, who has a track record of looking after them. Who's looked after us in the past? Who do we want to work with again? These are the clients who they want to give you the job. You know, you've got such a good relationship with you, they want to give you the job. Provided you've got the capability and the price is in the ballpark, they want to give you the job. So these, again, there's differentiation. This is titled differentiation in practice because when we explore it, I think there's a lot of things written about differentiation in the legal market, but these are the things that seem to stand out as to why clients are willing to pay a little bit more for some firms rather than others. There is a third group of clients. The third group of clients are the price-focused clients. And the price-focused clients are very much have the attitude of who's cheapest, capable of doing the job. And you know, they very much come from it. Look, you all look capable. I don't need any more friends, so just who's the cheapest? And that's their attitude and approach. And again, if we have a commodity mindset, these are the clients we're going to attract because we're not going to be focused on the expertise. We're not going to be focused on the relationship. We're going to be choosing to compete on price, and we're going to win more than our fair share of these clients. It's very, very difficult to create a sustainably profitable practice if you're serving the wrong clients. Now, often this will be a mixed thing. We may have to do some work for price-sensitive clients, but if the only clients we have are the price-sensitive clients, you've got a really poor practice. And the only way out is to actively focus on areas where we think we have better expertise than anybody else, a better track record. And this may not be, I'm not asking whether you are the greatest tax lawyer in the country, but what it may be is you may be the best tax lawyer serving small business in Kansas City. Nobody can do that better than you. So you invest in that, you focus on that, as a niche, and you target clients who want that. Similarly, if your focus is relationships, then you find clients who value the relationship and you invest in getting to know them. You invest in getting to understand their business. You invest in getting to understand the individual stakeholders and what's important to them. And you make sure that you serve them the way they want to be served and you love them to death, so that they will try to give you the work even if you're a little bit more expensive. There's another saying that clients who beat you up on price will beat you up on everything. And again, I come back to this issue that it's our role to justify why we should be chosen even if we are more expensive. If you choose to compete on price, you're going to get poor outcomes. We have to give the client a reason to choose us, even if we're not necessarily the cheapest. A couple of quotes I quickly want to share with you and then we'll move on, about competing on price. Nothing more dangerous than constantly reducing your price so you can sell more. It's a race to the bottom. I often see this view about people talking about, we'll discount, but we'll make it up on volume. It actually doesn't stack up in law firm economics. We only have X number of hours that we can sell, and the challenge is how do we maximize the amount that we're actually selling? That's the challenge. Maximize the sale price for the work that we are doing. And so again, often we think about hourly rates in the wrong way and we talk about hourly rates as a cost. I don't think we should think about hourly rates as a cost. I think we should think about hourly rates as a rationing tool. I've only got X number of hours. I'm not going to actually do them all as production because I have other things I need to do and I need to market and sell. So of the number of hours that I do want to sell this year, how do I ration them best? And I think that's the way we should be thinking about hourly rates. Second quote, the problem with the race to the bottom is you might win. One of the things that I always find amusing is when a client goes out to market, they ask 7 firms to provide a quote, and then we win the work because we were the cheapest. And we're celebrating that because we won. And yet there are 6 other firms who say you can't do it at that price. Now, why are we celebrating when it sounds like we're the ones who have got the pricing wrong? And then the final quote here, perhaps the reason price is all your clients care about is because you haven't given them anything else to care about. Again, it's our job to justify why we should be chosen even if they're more expensive. So these are the things from a mindset perspective. In my view, if we can get partners understanding this, focused on profit rather than revenue, focused on coming up with a price that's not only fair to the client but also fair to the firm, and recognizing that we should be focused on value and differentiation and justifying why we should be chosen even if we're more expensive, we're going to get better outcomes. If we don't have these attitudes, then we're going to get poor pricing outcomes. We're dealing with smart people. We just have to make sure that the starting point in terms of the way they think about pricing and approach pricing is appropriate. Okay, let's move on. I want to talk about pricing at a matter level. What are some of the things that we can think about here? And I want to start here with a very simple scenario, a scenario that I see play out over and over and over again. You've been targeting an attractive new client for months. So They're the sort of client that's in your sweet spot, you really like to be doing work for. They're a good size, they've got good size projects. And they've invited you to submit a proposal for a new project. So, so far so good. We're really happy, keen. We've got the opportunity now potentially to do some work for this great client. It's a competitive bid, and there's a range of firms that the client considers all capable of doing the work, and their decision ultimately comes down to which of these qualified firms has the lowest price. So it's the sort of scenario I see playing out over and over and over again within firms. Now, I would argue that if we get to this point, we failed. I give you an F on your report card for this. If this is where we get to, then we failed. And we failed in a range of ways. So let's talk about how do we avoid getting to this point? How do we avoid getting to the point where we do compete on price? So here's a couple of things that we can do. The first thing that we can do is be involved in contested bids, fine, but be the preferred provider, provided our price is in the ballpark. So this is, we're targeting clients who they value our relationship, or they value our expertise, or they value our insights or something. So that, yes, we understand that you want to get competitive quotes, but it's not just about price. If we're 5% more, that's fine. If we're 10% more, that may still be okay as well. So this is a much better place to play. Now, again, I don't want to say that that's an A grade. In fact, no, it's a better place to play, but I'd probably just give you a score of a D for that. So it's better, it's a pass mark, but we can probably do better still. So better still to be targeting prospects who aren't as focused on price at all, who are much more focused on the benefit side of the equation. Clients who actually see that they're willing to pay a premium to get firms that have the expertise, to get providers who have great knowledge of them and have served them well. They're willing to pay a premium for that because they value that, and they recognize that ultimately they're going to get better legal outcomes if they do that. So targeting less price sensitive clients. So again, that's not a great result, but it's certainly better than where we started. Better still is to avoid competition. To be in a situation where we're sole sourced, where the client is only getting a quote from us. Now, often when I talk about that, people will say, oh, that doesn't exist anymore. Clients always get multiple quotes. And I'm told this all of the time. And yet, I'll give you an example. This is straight out of a pricing audit that I'm doing for a firm at the moment. And this is a survey. And as part of the pricing audit, we do a survey amongst partners. And to date, we've had just over 100 partners of this firm participate in the online study. And we asked them a whole series of questions. It's about a 10-minute survey. But one of the questions is, what proportion of your work by revenue would be awarded without the client obtaining a quote from a competitor? And you can see that 43% of respondents have said over half of their work is currently awarded without obtaining a competitive quote from a competitor. Now, separately, by the way, in this study, when we ask the partners, what do you think of your current charge-out rates, 85% say that their rates are too high. And most of those say that they're far too high. And so they're concerned about their rates, and yet there's so much of their work is not contested. So much of their work is sole source. The client's not even getting a competitive quote. So again, if we can avoid competition, much better. And again, I'd ask you to think about this within your firm, within your client base. Clients, how many of them are getting quotes for their work and how many aren't? Can we find more clients who, because of the relationship, because of the way we serve them, it can be sole sourced? So if that gets a B, what gets us an A? What gets us an A in terms of a project? Well, I think the A's, the best that we can do is we're the ones who are generating the opportunities and taking them proactively to clients. So we have knowledge and insight into our clients, we have legal expertise, and we apply those two things together to proactively come up with ideas and take them to our clients. We often hear clients say, you know, tell me what I should be doing. And if we're doing that, if we're going to clients with ideas that they haven't thought of, then we're most likely that we're going to be in sole source territory, and we're really trying to convince the client of the business case of the idea rather than how our price stacks up relative to competitors. There are many, many examples I could talk about in this space. I want to share with you one that I saw recently, late last year. This won an award at the College of Law Practice Management, what they refer to as their Innovation Awards. And it's a medium-sized firm who have come up with a solution for online sellers. One of the challenges with online sellers is that they may quickly find out that their own products are being undercut online because of wholesalers who go through third-party markets, grey market sales, etc., counterfeit sales. And so what they came up with is a solution that they can take to online sellers and say, we'll just provide a comprehensive solution that manages all of this. So the comprehensive solution is the agreements that we set up with your wholesalers. We will actually do the online monitoring, so we will spot if there are breaches. We will then enforce those breaches. We'll take action. So all you have to do is work with us and help us understand what your strategy is, and then we'll implement the whole thing. We'll monitor it. We'll enforce it. It's a terrific end-to-end solution. And you can see that organizations who are trying to manage their online sales and control their online pricing, it's a fantastic solution for. There are many other examples I can think of. Another one I heard about recently in the US was a firm who was doing some work in the tertiary education space, and they recognized that every university having their own in-house legal actually wasn't particularly cost effective. So they went to a group of universities and they said, how about we set up this common shared external effectively legal offering, and it'll serve you, but it'll also serve 10 other universities, and it'll significantly reduce your cost of your legal because, you know, while you have to deal with these legal issues, they all have to as well. Far more cost effective to do it once and share it across the whole, and that's what they've set up. So there's, you know, these proactive ideas where we think about the clients and we come up with ideas and we take them to the client. So that's what gets you an A grade. An A grade rating is where we're proactive in that regard. Again, if we end up in a scenario where the client is getting multiple quotes and choosing based on price, I want you to recognize that you get an F on your report card for that. And I want you to challenge yourself and say, how do we do better? We actually, you know, this may be where we're at today, but how do we do better? How do we actually improve our grade? Here's another practical way of actually thinking about this, because again, in practice, I hear many partners who say, that's all very well, but my market, the clients that I serve, they're all price sensitive. This is an exercise that you can run within your firms. I always start here with, well, think about matters that are particularly price sensitive. What are the characteristics of those matters? What makes them price sensitive? And, you know, sometimes it'll come up that the value is not particularly tangible, the client's working in a low margin sector, whatever it is, different dimensions that make it price sensitive. And partners find this exercise very easy to do. They'll give you all of the reasons why a client or a matter or a service type is very price sensitive. Having done that exercise, I want you then to move on to the next part, which is to think about matters that are relatively less price sensitive. So relatively less price sensitive. What are the characteristics of these matters? What makes them less price sensitive? And have a brainstorm around that. Now, sometimes it'll be exactly the opposite of what was put up on the left-hand side. Sometimes there'll be new dimensions that come up. And so once we've done this, and once we've got our list of what's on the left and what's on the right, what I do is cross out everything that's on the left, rub it out, and then focus on what's on the right. Focus on what makes matters, what makes clients less price sensitive, and ask the question, how do we get more of those? So let's stop worrying about the price sensitive part of the market. Let's start focusing on the part of the market that's less price sensitive. Because if we can win more of that work, then we don't have to do the price sensitive work. So how do we get more of the right-hand side? So again, I find this a very practical exercise for identifying where we can get work that we can charge more for. Continuing on at the matter level, I think another key element at the matter level is about managing the client's emotional response to our price. There's a lot that's talked about pricing, particularly the analytics of pricing. But most of the really interesting research into pricing at the moment is not so much about the analytics and the science of pricing, but much more about the behavioural science. It's much more about how clients make decisions and how they go about choosing and how they look at your price. And a lot of the research highlights that what a client is ultimately trying to do is it's largely, pricing is a very emotional thing. And what clients are looking for is, most clients will say, and again, I'd like you to think about your behaviour. If you were to go out and buy a new pair of shoes, most people would say, I'm happy to pay what's fair, but I don't want to be ripped off. And that's the emotion around pricing. I don't want to be ripped off. I don't want to pay more than I have to. I don't want to pay more than the next person. You know, I'm not necessarily after the cheapest pair of shoes, but I want to know that I'm getting a good price. I want to know that the price is fair. Now, if we understand that, then it's our role to actually manage that, to manage the client's emotional response to our price. We move into, for those of you who are interested in this area, there's a guy called Dan Ariely who wrote a fantastic book called Predictably Irrational. So he says that we think of ourselves as rational beasts, rational human beings, and they've done so much research that proves that we're actually quite irrational, but we are irrational in very predictable ways. When we talk about this and bring it back to pricing, the price that you charge, it's not so much about the quantum, it's about the relativity. Now, this is what we refer to as frame of reference. If I want to know that the price of that pair of shoes is a good price, I have to compare it to something. If you tell me that it's a $200 pair of shoes, I don't know whether that's a good price or a bad price. My only way of knowing if it's a good price or a bad price is to compare it to something. I may compare it to what I paid for my last pair of shoes. I may compare it to other offerings in the store. I may go onto Amazon and see what the same pair of shoes is there. I'm going to compare that price to something. So it's about the frame of reference. So what's the frame of reference that you would like your clients to be comparing your price to? Because it's our job to manage that frame of reference. There are two things I would really like clients to be comparing our price to. The first is what's at stake. Get them focused on the business case for doing this. Get them focused on what's at stake. The difference between a realistic good outcome and a realistic bad outcome. Because if there's an awful lot at stake, why are you buying cheap? It doesn't make sense. It's not a rational decision. And if we can help clients understand what's at stake, at the very least, they generally become less price sensitive. The second thing that I would like them to compare our price to is other offers that we provide. This is the #1 pricing tactic used in all markets other than legal. If you go into a retail store, there'll always be multiple options in a category. Why? Because they want you to compare the price to other offers that they're providing rather than leave the store to compare the price to somebody else. There's a great US author by the name of Alan Weiss. He refers to giving clients a choice of yeses. If you go to a client and you say, here's what we're going to do and here's the price, you are putting the client under the pressure of making a decision based on yes or no. It is the only decision you have given them. Should I go with it or not? And he says, I don't like those odds. I don't like the yes-no odds. Whereas if you go to a client and you say, look, we could approach it in this way, we could do it this way, or we could do it this way, now you're giving clients a choice of yeses. He says it absolutely improves the odds. And I've got many empirical examples of where this has worked within law firms. Clients love this. I remember talking about this at a conference once. Several hundred law firms in the audience, and as I was presenting this, one person in the audience started to applaud, and it was the one client that was in the room. They were actually the next speaker. And so, of course, I threw it to them and I said, why are you applauding, Maria? And she said, well, you know, as the client, I don't want you to impose your views on me. I want you to help me understand different ways that I could deal with this scenario so that I can choose which of those represents best value to me. That's what I want you to do, is give me the options, allow me to choose, give me the freedom of choice. So we can manage the client's frame of reference. Of course, if we're not doing these things, if all we are doing is saying, here's what we're going to do, here's our price, then what we're really encouraging the client to do is go and get another quote from another firm and compare our price to theirs. That's a frame of reference I would prefer to avoid if I can, or at least not to have that as the only frame of reference. I don't want the only frame of reference to be a competitor. What are other things that we can do to manage the client's emotional response to the price? One is simply about communication. There are many lawyers who don't like talking about price with clients. The problem with that is the client wonders, what are you trying to hide? You know, I'm trying to enter into a commercial transaction with you where you provide services for a price, but you won't talk to me about the price. Why won't you talk to me about the price? What are you trying to hide? Are you trying to trick me? Whereas if you're open and you talk to them and you engage in the discussion, clients feel, okay, well, this is good because I want to know and we're having a discussion about it and we're talking about ways that we can deal with it. All of that, of course, leads to no surprises on invoicing. There's a lot of research that highlights that the best way to lose a client is to send them an invoice that they weren't expecting. And so we have to avoid surprises on invoices. If you think that the invoice may come as a surprise to the client, I strongly encourage you to call the client in advance and talk to them about it and explain it in advance. You have much greater chance of managing the situation if you are. Show the client the respect of demonstrating that we know price is important and we are conscious of it, and therefore we want to make sure that you understand why it's cost what it has. Another part of this in terms of managing the client's emotional response is behaving in a cost-conscious manner. Now, by the way, I actually believe most lawyers do behave in a cost-conscious manner, but we don't help the client understand that we have. So we look at a project and we think about the matter and we think, how can we do this in the most cost-effective way? And we come up with the solution that we think is the most cost-effective. You know, it may start, look, if we do everything, it'll cost $80,000. We think we can leave those things out. That'll bring it down to $60,000. We then go back to the client with a proposal saying, here's what we're going to do and it's going to cost $60,000. And the response we're likely to get from the client is, but I don't want to spend $60,000. Now let's just change this whole approach in one way, and it's purely about communication. Let's help the client understand that we have been behaving in a cost-conscious manner. So the conversation we have with the client is, look, if we were to do everything on this matter, it'll cost $80,000. In our view, you can safely leave these things out, and if we do, then that will bring it down to $60,000. If you want us to do those things, we're happy to do them. That'll be $80,000. But if we leave them out, it'll reduce the price to $60,000. Now the response you're likely to get from the client is thank you. And it's purely, I think there are so many things that lawyers do that are cost conscious, but we don't talk to the client. This is how do we staff a matter. We've decided to staff it in this way because we think it's the most cost effective. We've decided to approach it in this way because it's the most cost effective. If you are able to provide us the information in this way, you can reduce the amount that you pay us. These are the discussions that clients want you to have with them. And if you are having them with them, most clients will say that the cost consciousness is actually more important than price. I've seen multiple research studies that demonstrate that cost consciousness is more important to clients than price. So there's a real opportunity if we do work in this space. The final part of this about managing clients' emotional response to price is embracing positive pricing discussions rather than being defensive and combative. Anytime we are having a pricing discussion with a client, it's an opportunity to strengthen the relationship and build trust if we manage it well. The opposite is also true. If we don't manage it well, then we're going to damage relationships, we're going to destroy trust. So we have to learn how to have these discussions with pricing that demonstrate that we are trying to come up with something that works for you, we're trying to come up with something that's fair for you, we're trying to behave in a cost-conscious fashion so that we're building relationships, enhancing trust. So a range of things that I would encourage you to think about that can help improve matter pricing. Okay, the final one, and again, we can cover these reasonably quickly. The final part I wanted to talk about is where are you leaving money on the table? Where could you be charging more today? And there's a couple of things that I would encourage you to look at, and this is more at a firm level. At a firm level, where could we be charging more today? The first place to look is where we've got high utilization. So one of the first things I do in an audit with a firm is I look at utilization, and I try to look for people, in particular partners, who this year, last year, the year before, they're hitting their utilization targets, they're exceeding their utilization targets. Simple economics 101. Chances are demand outstripping supply. They're probably working in a great market. They've probably got a really good reputation in that space, and they probably have really good relationships. And so the work is just flowing in. You know, if we were charging them more, why would it matter? So that's the easiest place to look. We're probably undercharging for those people. Simple economics 101. The second is to look at where we have price setting discretion. There are two things that drive price setting discretion. The first is about our market position. If we are a market leader, we have price setting discretion. If we're capable of doing the job, but so are others, we have less price setting discretion. The other thing that influences price setting discretion is how price sensitive is the market. Is the client buying based on price, or is the client focused on other elements? Relationships, expertise, reputation. Is it a price sensitive market or not? Those are the two things that drive price setting discretion. If we're down here, the bottom left-hand side, we have to compete on price. If we're a market leader in a price sensitive market, we may get a price premium, but it's likely to be pretty small. Where there's a real opportunity to push prices are if we're the market leader in a price insensitive market. So again, when I do an audit of a firm, I'm looking for the parts of the market where we have strong reputation and it's not price sensitive. Chances are we can charge more. I'll share with you a discussion I had recently with a partner in a firm. And you know, I was asking them to tell me about their practice. I know not all partners are like this, but there are certainly some partners in most firms that I find are like this. They were telling me how price is not really a key factor in winning work. It might be relationships, or it might be referral sources. In fact, this partner was telling me they couldn't even think of the last time they competed for work. It's just allocated to them, sole sourced. They do say, you know, clients often question and challenge the price, and so they were thinking that the clients are reasonably price sensitive. So the question I asked them was, what would happen if your rates were $50 higher? And they sat there and they thought for a while, and they said, not a lot. You know, it'd have minimal impact on my practice. I'd still get the work. So this is where there's opportunities. Now, there are other partners that I'd interview who you'd ask the question, what would happen if your rates were $50 higher? And they'd say, you'd destroy my practice. I wouldn't get any work. So, sometimes it's about identifying these. Where have we already got price setting discretion? That's the second way of looking for where we should be charging more. The third, new work. I have this view that if what we're trying to do is climb the profit ladder, become more and more profitable over time, then ideally new work should be more profitable than existing work. One of the things that we know is hard is getting existing clients' rates up, particularly dramatically. Really hard to go back to a client and saying, we're putting your rates up by 20% this year. But when we bring new work in, we should be trying to ensure that it's more profitable than our existing work so that we're climbing the profit ladder. Now, by comparison, and often I find it quite amusing where a partner will go running around the office. I've got this great new opportunity. I've got this great new opportunity that's landed on my desk. And they end up in the CFO's office and they say, how much can I discount it? And the very starting point is, how much can I discount it? If it's such a great opportunity, why do we need to discount? That's not my definition of a great opportunity. Whereas what do we think is a fair price for this? And if it's not giving us more than what we currently get, then it's actually destroying the profitability of our firm. It's damaging it. Whereas new work should make our firm more profitable. So, range of areas where we can think about charging more. The other one that we've already talked about is price insensitive markets, and we talked about how to identify those. That's where I wanted to end. We do have some time for some questions, although just a little bit of time. So again, I want to come back what we were trying to do today, identify opportunities to immediately improve pricing outcomes, and the three areas that we focused on being starting with the right mindset, doing some certain things at a matter level, and then identifying areas where we can charge more.